Travel Squad podcast.
We're four friends that grew up together in the same small town.
We followed each other to San Diego, and now we adventure the world together.
One passport stamp at a time.
We're here to share our travel stories and inspire you to go on your own adventures.
Even if it starts with your own backyard. I'm Jamal.
Brittany, Kim,
And I'm Dana.
And we're the Travel Squad podcast.
So grab your tickets,
Your passport.
And don't forget your travel insurance.
And prepare for takeoff. Hello, fellow travelers. Welcome to episode 5 of the Travel Squad podcast. Today, we are exploring Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks.
We heard stories about these giant sequoia trees, and because they're only several hours away from us here in San Diego, we figured, what the heck, let's make a road trip and go see them.
We stayed in Visalia, which is about a 45-minute drive from the park. That way, if you know us, we love cheap accommodation, and it was going to save us money.
and from start to finish, this whole trip was only 54 hours. And it was over an Easter weekend. We just made a little getaway out of it. And we're talking about Sequoia and Kings Canyon because they're right next to each other. So you can hit both of them at the same time. You know we love efficiency, so let's get started.
So, Mr. Historian, can you tell us about Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks?
Yeah, so actually, both of these national parks are two separate national parks, but they touch each other. Now, the parks are famous because they house the giant sequoia trees. These are the largest trees on Earth, and not necessarily the highest. Granted, they are tall, they grow over 200 feet, but largest by volume because the trees are so wide. I mean, they're just incredible when you actually go ahead and see them. Sequoia was the first national park in that area, protecting the trees. Kings Canyon was actually called General Sherman National Park, but in the 1940s, they renamed it Kings Canyon National Park and added more wildlife area to it and encompassing more of the valley of the trees. And Kings Canyon definitely gets its name because of the canyon that was carved out by an ancient glacier. So that's where the name
So
comes from.
interesting.
Yeah.
I do know that in Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks, there is Mount Whitney, and it is one of the hikes that I do want to take you guys on sometime. We'd have to invest in a backpacking trip because it takes like 2 or 3 days.
We're
to
not
hike.
going on that backpacking trip until we go to Havasupai Falls. My demand.
Put it on the list.
Mount Whitney is the highest point in the contiguous United States, and it's located within Sequoia National Park. So you know me, I love a good hike.
That sounds really cool.
I know, right? That's some high altitude there.
Do they have permits to hike that, or can you hike that?
You do need
can.
permits.
I actually have a old coworker that did hike it.
One thing I find just interesting, well, one of these days we need to definitely go ahead and do that. But one thing I find interesting, so like Brittany said, this is the highest point in the contiguous United States. So, you know, the touching 48. I think the other tallest is Mount Denali in Alaska. But anyway, Mount Whitney's at like 14,505 feet. But it's less than 100 miles away from the lowest point in North America, which is in Death Valley National Park. And I think that's just like
Weird.
crazy disparity of like just the natural beauty and topography of California. Like less than 100 miles away, you have the highest point like in North America minus Denali in Alaska, and then you have the lowest point.
See,
in
we're going to
North
have to
America.
go to Mount Whitney because we have been to Badwater Basin on our Death Valley
That's true.
trip.
For comparison, how does it compare to Rainbow Mountain in terms of height?
Rainbow Mountain, I think, was at 14,000 feet.
Oh my God. I do not want to hike Mount Whitney.
You think you don't, but you're going
Are there
to.
horses involved?
No horses.
Hey, just so for some of our listeners, Rainbow Mountain was a hike that we actually did when we were in Cusco, Peru, in the Andes Mountains, and the elevation was like 14,000 feet. And just because of the altitude, it was definitely tough to breathe. So that's what
brutal.
Kim's talking about. But we do have a future episode coming up that we will be talking about that. So definitely stay tuned.
I have a coworker who hiked Mount Whitney, and she was fine, but her boyfriend was puking at the top. He couldn't handle it. He completed it, but it's high.
Because of the
Can't
altitude.
wait.
Because of the altitude, yeah.
So you have to prepare in advance if you're going to hike it.
Excellent.
One other thing about this park is that there's limited cell reception. So you guys know that I'm the planner of the group. I'm the doer. So I made sure to download an area of the park before we went into Google Maps to use the offline maps. And that way I had accessibility to the trailheads, directions between the two parks. If you're looking for a particular visitor center, you can put that in your offline maps and it'll tell you how to get there. Additionally, when I go on a hike, I usually take pictures of what the trailhead's going to look like or what the trail itself is going to look like, because Zaina, she is our app tracker for our route on Runkeeper.
Yep.
And so I always take a picture of what the trail looks like so that we can kind of make sure we're following the same pattern.
Yeah, and this isn't an ad at all for Runkeeper, but it's an amazing app, and it will tell you your mileage, how long it takes you for each mile, your average, and then it also tracks your footing. So we have been lost in the past, and Brittany is excellent. Jamal laughs because he knows exactly what I'm talking about. And I pulled out the app. Brittany was able to look at our footprints, and she was able to get us back onto the route. So it's a really good app to have. And that's my contribution every time we take a hike is I track it.
And you can have the drill sergeant voice motivating you along.
Exactly. Yeah, I have it every 10 minutes letting us know how far or how not far
You
we
are averaging half a mile every 15 minutes.
Right?
One thing I just want to touch on too before we kind of get off the subject of, about the parks. 84% of Sequoia and Kings Canyon is designated wilderness. So only 16% of the park is accessible kind of by like road or trail. The rest of it's designated wilderness for animal life. And if you want to go ahead and hike that, they're undesignated trails. But a lot, like we said, Mount Whitney is there, definitely high altitude peaks. And so a lot of Kings Canyon is above the tree line, which is actually a designated line where trees can't grow because of the altitude anymore. And so a lot of it's just kind of like open, vast space just as well beyond the giant trees.
When we went on this trip, we actually went during Easter weekend. And the year that we went, it was in April. And there was still a lot of snow in the canyons. And so...
Sure was.
Kind of hindered one of our hikes.
both of our hikes, actually.
We just love to go on trips when the weather wants to throw a little wrench in there.
You know why? So we can have the trails all to ourselves.
And that's actually a good point, is when the weather is less than temperate, you can expect to have more of the trail to yourself, which is really nice to be in the middle of a beautiful forest, snow-covered grounds with just you and the people you came with.
And I would actually prefer to be cold on a hike than hot, because you can always wear layers. You can always take layers off if you warm up. But when it's hot, it's just miserable.
And I just want to say, I think that's really a testament to our travel squad. We just do stuff anyway. Even if there's like snow covering
snow.
the trail, like we just go out and do it. And a lot of people would let something like that hinder their trip or say like, oh no, there's snow on the trail, I don't want to do it. But sometimes that makes it a lot more fun.
And the best part about being in a group is even if I say I don't want to do it,
Someone's going to force you to do it.
I really don't have a choice, guys. I'm going to have to do it because there's 3 other people who are doing it. And we're not saying go out in a snowstorm or anything like that. Obviously be safe, have caution. But, if there's snow on the ground, don't let that deter you.
There's certainly been points where each one of us has thought, like, I really don't want to do this. But then the group takes over and we all end up going anyway.
Yeah.
So that's, we motivate each other along.
We do.
I'm just laughing because I'm thinking about the Fallen Goliath trail that we're going to talk about later and how that circles back around to you, Kim, and your point that you just made.
So we have a few tips for snow hiking, and my biggest tip would be to wear wool socks because your feet are likely going to get wet, and the wool socks wick moisture away from your feet, keeping them nice and dry.
Also, wear hiking shoes that are waterproof.
Pro tip.
Clutch.
Yeah.
Yeah, because on this one, our feet were just we were falling into the snow. Like, I think that's at one point, like, and we'll talk about this a
Came
little
to
bit
my
more later,
knees.
where we had to eventually turn back is because we kept sinking into it too much. But definitely when there's a lot of snow, you do want to wear crampons, which are like the spikes that you're able to add to the bottom of your shoes. They definitely help give you traction, which is great. But if the snow is really soft and you start sinking in, I mean, that's not going to do too much for you at that point.
Yeah, it's like if you drive through snow, you put chains on your tires. If you walk through snow, you put crampons on your shoes.
I've never thought of it that way. That's actually kind of clever.
Spot
And when you go on these hikes, it's good to bring a change of clothes to keep in the car because you're going to be wet, you're going to be muddy, and you're going to want to change so that you can get nice and dry. Also, one other thing, I did not bring my hiking poles on this trip, but I do have hiking poles that are made to have attachments on the bottom that are good for snow trekking. So if you have hiking poles, you might want to look to see if you can change out your bottoms, bring them along because it's very helpful, especially when you're trekking through snow.
And another shout out to making sure that you do have an app, because if the trail is covered with snow and it starts to snow later on, you're going to be SOL finding your way back.
One last thing too, I mean, Brittany mentioned having and dressing in layers, but definitely don't underestimate, having gloves, having a beanie and a
yes.
jacket. And I think Zaina can attest to this because I love her, but my God, you're the worst preparer for any trip ever.
She always brings her shark beanie.
Well, she comes with the shark beanie, but
I know what he's talking
I can't
about.
tell you how many times we've gone on stuff and like she doesn't have her gloves, and she does like Peru,
Gloves, I
for
know.
example.
Like
yeah.
the snow.
When we hiked Rainbow Mountain, it was the coldest that we've probably ever been. Like, it was ridiculously cold, and I was like just dying of the cold. And Jamal looks at me, and it's kind of like one of those Dumb and Dumber moments where he didn't bring gloves to the Rockies. Well, I didn't bring gloves to the Andes, and Jamal was so mad at me, and he takes his gloves off and he gives them to me because he doesn't want me to be cold.
And he's a gentleman.
Yeah,
That's
he
nice.
is. So bring your gloves so no other guy in your group has to give it up for you.
So the first day we actually went to Sequoia National Park. And there were 3 things that were on the list that we needed to do. One of them was seeing General Sherman, which is the largest tree, which we'll talk about a little bit more later. We wanted to do Morro Rock, but the first hike that we did that day was the Tacoma Falls Trail.
And lengthwise, it wasn't very long. It was only 3.4 miles round trip, but we never made it to the actual falls.
We heard it.
There's supposed to be a waterfall at the end. We didn't see that.
We did not.
We were to the left and it was to the right. And we turned back because it got so snowy and thick that that's where we kept sinking in.
That, and I don't think we kind of lost the trail too because there was so much. I mean, it was in a valley and we could have probably just continued straight and found our way back, but we had several other things we wanted to do that day and we didn't really want to risk it. And so we had a nice hike in the snow, but we didn't make it to the falls, unfortunately. So if you go during springtime, you may be able to see it yourselves, guys, and let us know how it was.
And the danger ninja in me was terrified of bears being on the trail, guys.
There's tons of bears in that area.
It was snowing though. They were hibernating.
No, it's April. It's the start of spring. They should be out and about with the cubbies. That's when they're most violent. And I'm going to protect my babies.
But actually, the only time I have seen a bear was in Yosemite and it was April.
Yeah.
So.
That's around the time that they
Yeah.
come out of hibernation.
In hindsight, we should have really just followed the river because the river would have gotten us to the waterfall.
Well, we did. We did see like a river creek and we were following the sound, but it was the wrong way. It was a different side of it.
There was 2 different creeks.
Yeah.
We were following the wrong creek.
Yeah. See, our natural intuition isn't as sharp as it used to be back in the day without technology.
But nonetheless, even though we didn't make it to the falls, we definitely had a good time. And even though those aren't some of the largest of trees kind of on that trail, I mean, it was just still beautiful to do some snow hiking. Eventually, at one point, even though there was snow on the ground, it warmed up. We found that creek with the log that was, or the fallen tree that was kind of over the creek. And do you remember we all scooted over to it and took photos like hanging over the creek and stuff like that? That was a really fun one.
I think there was also a hill on that hike. Not even a hill, but we had to go down like a little bit of a hill. And so we slid down it, and then we took pictures of us sliding on our butts down that hill. Remember that?
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah. Just having fun out there.
Yeah.
It was just beautiful and desolate. There was not many people on the trail, so we had which is nice. We love having trails to ourselves. It was worth going, but I wish we had seen the falls.
Yeah.
On the next
time.
adventure. Yeah,
Do that.
absolutely.
Great attitude.
So after the falls, we headed over to General Sherman Tree, which, as we mentioned earlier, it is the largest living tree in the world.
I mean, it's huge. I mean, when you see it, it's crazy. So when we say largest, I don't want our listeners to think necessarily the tallest, because it's not. So General Sherman stands at about 275 feet tall. As a matter of fact, it has a diameter of about 36 feet. So, I mean, just imagine a tree trunk base that's 36 feet, across. It's huge.
It's got girth.
It's got girth. So when we
Love
say so when we say it's the largest tree, we're talking in terms of volume, not necessarily height. So it's just so wide and tall. But the tallest tree is in the Redwoods National Park in California just as well. But nonetheless, I mean, you see it, and I mean, it's just amazing. So there's a specific trail. You got to hike kind of down to it, but this is the park's most popular attraction, obviously. So it is so crowded when you go down there.
Yeah. That's one thing I didn't really like about it. You have to sit there and wait for your turn to take a picture with it. And just behind them and all around General Sherman, there's a million other trees that are
Almost just as big.
pretty much just as big that don't have anyone by them. You can take all the pictures you want with them. Get up there and really hug them, get a grasp, and spend some quality tree time with them.
Feel its girth.
It's funny when you say that story of so many other big trees around that no one's paying attention to. Just side tangent, sorry guys. But it reminds me of when we were at the Louvre and everyone's looking at the Mona Lisa, and then you have 10 million Da Vincis all around that no one's paying attention to, and you just get to enjoy it kind of to yourself. So, I mean, it's worth definitely seeing for sure. I mean, you don't want to go to the park and not see General Sherman, but there's so many other like just cool trees around. I mean, you could stand directly in front of these and, I mean, spread out your arms, and I mean, you're going to look like a tiny little ant compared to that thing. It's ridiculous.
And pro tip, if you want the best shot, you should put your phone in pano mode and shoot it up vertically so you can get the base and the height of the tree while you're in it.
And there's going to be a lot of people there wanting to get their picture. Don't be afraid to push your way to the front. We're not talking like literally pushing people or being aggressive, but people are standing around. Everyone's kind of looking at one another like, oh, are you going? Am I going? So don't be afraid to have the confidence and balls to just go for it. Get your picture.
Even if you're standing in line and having the etiquette of it, we saw a couple people kind of like cut to the front. So I don't want to say be that rude person, but to Zaina's point, just be aggressive. I mean, if you're in line and kind of there's a pause from the next person or from the last person that actually has taken a photo, just step up and go, because eventually if you don't do that, somebody else is going to step in front of you.
But have your camera ready. So when you do make that jump in, someone can take that picture for you.
Yeah, you can always make a deal with someone and say, I'll take yours if you take mine. And then that way you're kind of guaranteed that next spot up after you take someone's picture. Kind of, pass it forward.
It's a great tip.
I know. You just got to have good picture karma, though. I hate when you take such a good picture for someone else and then you make that deal and then they take that terrible picture of you.
tell you how many
Go on a tangent right now.
I can't tell you how many times that's happened.
I don't know what it is. Sorry, Jamal. But something about the way guys take pictures. First of all, they always cut your feet off. And I like a head to toe photo, personally. It really captures the shape of my body a lot better. Second thing, guys love to take pictures where above your head is just blank space. Nothing there. Your feet are cut off and blank space above your head. Every single guy. So, pro tip, ask a female and a young female, not an old lady, to take your picture because you're going to get a better shot. I've tried it. It's tried and true.
I just want to say one thing. Who takes most of the photos of our group?
With some
discipline.
coaching.
With some, but how many times have I actually taken them, and then sometimes you were like, ooh, I don't want my feet, or ooh, get a little bit higher. So sure. Pros and cons, but nonetheless, to Kim's point, I definitely do agree, but I've definitely had some women take the photos and I'm just like, man, I took you a solid. Like, why are you trying to do me dirty like
Yeah,
this and
and
take me
like
a shitty
more
photo?
than one. Those people that take one photo.
Yeah, what's wrong
Get
with
the
you?
fuck out of here.
Seriously. I mean, come on, like have some etiquette
Give
for the
me
other
like
people.
3 or 5 to choose from.
But also don't be that person that's like above, below, down to the side. Now hold hands, smile. It's like, okay, 3 is good.
3's a solid.
Thank you, sir.
But yeah, the trail actually down to General Sherman. I mean, you kind of where you park at the trailhead, because there is a parking lot there. It is kind of a hike down. So once you get to the tree, it's a hike up out, but it's not too bad, I would say. What was it, like about half a mile?
Yeah, probably
Yeah.
a mile round trip. And it's a paved trail the entire way
Yeah, it's a
down.
paved trail because it is so popular. It's not like, you're doing extreme hiking. So it's definitely easy trail. But one of the other things that we wanted to do when we were at Sequoia was Morro Rock. Now, Morro Rock is actually like a granite protrusion that pops out from... why are you laughing at
I love
that?
the way you said that.
It's a granite protrusion. It reminds me of my geology and geography days back in college. I love those subjects. But anyway, nonetheless, it is a giant rock that pops out of the mountain. And it actually stands at an elevation of roughly like 6,700 feet. But don't worry, you don't have to hike that high. The actual hike is actually only like 300 feet of like carved out stairs from the rock. But it gives you a really, really awesome view of the valley below, the trees, and it's at the edge of the giant forest, which actually has 5 of the 10 most massive and largest trees on Earth. So it gives you just like a really good overlook panorama of the park and the trees below.
Yeah, it's a bummer we couldn't do that one.
Why weren't we able to do it, ladies?
The weather.
It was icy. The steps weren't safe to climb up, so it wasn't recommended at that time.
It was closed.
Zaina didn't encourage us to be a danger ninja that day and go up there and do it?
No, we probably would have did it if it was open and available. I think the road even to get to it was closed.
Oh, was it? I thought it was
Yeah.
just the trail.
That's okay. We'll go back to Sequoia. We'll do this one, and we'll do the Tacopa
Tacoma
Falls.
Falls.
I
We'll
can't think.
redeem ourselves.
Exactly.
We also have to find out if Fallen Goliath is real.
Well, that's in a different park. We're getting there, Kim. You're jumping ahead right now.
I'm teasing it.
Typical Kim.
So that really sums up our day 1 in Sequoia National Park, and our day 2 was focused on Kings Canyon National Park. So we wanted to start the day seeing the second largest tree, and that was General Grant tree. So we went to the General Grant Loop Trail, and fun fact, General Grant is actually celebrated each year as the nation's Christmas tree. Did anyone know that?
I did
National
not.
Christmas
Do they
No.
tree.
decorate it?
I don't think so.
I've seen photos where park rangers have like a wreath and they're posing in front of it, with it, like if you Google it online. But I think it was President Calvin Coolidge that designated it as it. So it's just kind of like a national tradition where they say General Grant, because I think at the time they thought that one was the largest. Now, obviously, there's been larger trees that have existed in Kings Canyon and Sequoia. They got cut down in the logging days. So this is what's left. So, I mean, in terms of like massive trees, like these are still large, but there were bigger ones back in the day there. But National Christmas Tree, nonetheless.
We went there first thing in the morning, and there was absolutely no crowds, and it was really nice to walk on the paths amongst all of these large trees and get the photos that we wanted because there was no one else on the trail.
Well, this morning was Easter, was it not?
It was Easter morning.
It was Easter
And
morning.
we started our morning with a healthy breakfast, not at a buffet.
Where was our breakfast?
Well, you guys had breakfast at McDonald's. So we're not really big fast food people. But for some reason, whenever we take trips, especially road trips, we always end up at a McDonald's.
It's because they have the hash browns and
Hash browns are bomb.
Yeah.
Who doesn't love a McMuffin?
I think it's because it's fast, quick, easy, always open, and always around. So we just end up there. And this is where we ended up that morning.
And did you eat breakfast that morning, Kim?
I did not eat breakfast. And my reason was yesterday's hike, it was a little bit less strenuous than I wanted it or that we were planning for. And I didn't want to waste calories on another unhealthy breakfast and not get my hike in, since there was a risk that the snow was going to prevent us from doing this hike.
I don't think that happened.
And also, just to give you a little bit of information that we're going to throw back out at you at the end of the this hike is I brought a bagel with me. And throughout the trip, I was asking, hey guys, anyone want the bagel? Anyone want the bagel? No one wanted the bagel. So
No one wanted
Like,
to eat your
Zayna,
fucking
stop
bagel.
offering us this stale ass bagel.
I know. It was like, what was it? It was like in your backpack also had a banana in there. So like you opened the bag with the bagel and it kind of smelled like a banana. And Zaina was just like, anyone want a piece? And it was like, no one wants a fucking piece of your bagel, Zaina. But like, keep that in mind for like when we kind of finish the story here and come back around to it. Because it kind of comes to a climax at the end.
It's going to be a 5-star breakfast.
So, we plan these trips, or I plan these trips with the intent in mind that we need to do certain things. And one of the hikes that we wanted to do was called Heart Tree, Fallen Goliath, Redwood Creek Trail. And we went in April and there was snow. So we knew that there was a chance that a hike or several hikes would possibly be closed. So we drive to the park, we get to the ranger station, we're about to be let into the park, and we ask the ranger, hey, do you know if this trail is open or not? Can we still hike it? And he actually says to us, well, the trail's open, you can go on the hike, but the 2-mile road down to the trailhead and parking lot is closed. So if you'd like to do the hike, you can walk down the extra 2 miles. So adding on 4 miles more
Round
trip, making our 7-mile hike an 11-mile hike.
No big deal.
What'd you say,
We
right?
do 11-mile hikes all the time.
Do it on
and
the
I
daily.
said, I came on this trip to hike. We're doing that hike. What's another 4 miles? And I said, we're doing it.
Yeah, so Kim pretty much had a freak out in the back seat. She was like, I need to get my workout in. We're going to do this hike.
We barely hiked yesterday. We got to do a good hike today.
So she's mad and she's forcing us.
So this is one of those things where we were saying earlier that sometimes one person doesn't really want to do it, but then the rest of the group convinces them to. Well, a little bit opposite. The rest of the group didn't want to, and one person convinced them to.
Kim threw a shit fit. Like, let's do it.
I don't know if we were really convinced. I think we just kind of went along with it.
Well, I think that, and we just like, okay, what else were we going to hike that day in Kings Canyon? Because the other trails, too, in different locations, really weren't accessible because of the snow. So it was kind of just like, all right, so we're going to do it.
It wasn't like a major strenuous hike either. I think it was a moderate-ish hike.
No, it
moderate.
wasn't, because we had to hike 2 miles down the unpaved road that's supposedly supposed to lead to the parking lot, but because of the weather, that was closed.
Mm-hmm.
But from the original trailhead of where it's only supposed to be out about 7 miles, you're kind of like in a canyon, so there's not really a lot of like elevation gain. You're in the forest itself, so that hike wasn't really supposed to be strenuous at all. Mm-hmm. But we obviously had to park on the outside of that little 2-mile road. We hiked down, we got to the trailhead, and then we started.
Getting down was an adventure itself. It was like super icy and snowy. So we were slipping, we were sliding, we were just trying to like
Having a good time.
get down to the trailhead itself.
And the best part is we're going down 2 miles, which means at the end of the 7 miles, or at this point 9, when we're going to be tired and done with the hike, we've got 2 more to go up.
No
And
big deal.
it was pretty steep.
Yeah, so no worries. I started my Runkeeper app, and we did we went down those 2 miles.
Wasn't it not a beautiful hike, though? All the beautiful trees. We took so many pictures. There were waterfalls.
There was a creek that we had to cross over and we immediately got our feet wet. Do you remember that?
Yep, that was part of the fun.
But eventually we had to balance and cross over a log because it was a river that we couldn't cross. Remember that?
I do.
I do.
But originally, before we spoke to the park ranger and realized we had to hike the extra 4 miles round trip of the road down to the trail, we were thinking, okay, 7 miles. And yes, that's a lot. But in all honesty, compared to other hikes that we've done, it's not very big. So we didn't come like super prepared in terms of like snacks or food. We had obviously our hiking backpacks, which had our water, but we just had like 2 bananas. One was for me, one was for Brittany. I don't think Kim or Zaina brought anything.
I brought any snacks.
I had a bagel.
Well, in the car. And then
no one wanted.
I think Brittany and I just had like barely a handful of nuts. But nonetheless, we started the hike.
It's snowy. There's snow on the trail.
Not the whole trail, but a lot of the trail had it. But needless to say, we got lost.
So Kim, at 7 miles in, what did you say?
Look at that beautiful tree.
Bullshit.
After about 7 miles, I was like, fuck this hike. What the fuck are we doing out here?
I was so fucking pissed when you said that. Like, honestly, like, you know, you were the one who, I don't want to say threw a fit, even though I did say you threw the shit fit earlier. Like, we got to do the hike. But you're like, let's do the hike. What's 4 more miles? Add it on. We got to get a good one. And then obviously at that point, like when you said that, we knew we were lost. Like even though we took a photo of what the trail route looked like and we were tracing it to the run keeper to see if we were on point. I don't know if the National Park Service posted the wrong mileage or what, but clearly something was off because we were hiking more miles according to the Run Keeper app. And then you said that, and I held my composure.
You had a freak out?
No, I held my composure, but I almost lost my shit because you were the one who wanted to do it, and then you said, "No, I don't want to do it
I was
anymore."
just
Like I'm
frustrated because
over
we were
it.
lost. We kept trying to check the map and get back on track, and we were just like, "Where are we?" There was 2 things we were supposed to see: the heart tree, right? Mm-hmm.
We came
And
across that though.
We did.
Finally, we did. But then Fallen Goliath was another one we were supposed to see. That
What is fallen Goliath?
who knows?
I mean, it's a fallen big tree, though, right? I mean,
Yes.
that's what it is. But
Yeah.
we didn't come across it on the trail. But I know when Kim said, "Fuck this, I'm over the hike." I mean, I just got really defeated because she wanted to do the hike at that point. But we were all so exhausted. I think that's when we kind of just took the break to recompose ourselves. And Brittany and I shared a banana.
We rationed.
It was at 11 miles. It was at
later?
11
Okay,
miles.
I thought it was at that point.
Which, by the way, though, when Kim did say I'm over this hike at that 7 miles, her and Brittany were a little bit. They walked ahead of Jamal and I, and so
Trying
I
to
was
find the way.
right. Exactly. So Jamal actually did. He composed himself. He was a gentleman, but he looked at me and he's like, "I just can't believe." Kim, this was her idea, and now she doesn't even want to do this hike. And I remember laughing so hard at Jamal.
7 miles was, we were actually about to cross over the river, and we made a little station where we sat down and had a few snacks before we crossed over the river. Do you remember that?
I do. This is, I think, just the little food that we had for snacks. We had that. But the thing about the Runkeeper app is like, because again, it does track your footsteps. So it is showing us going in a circle that we haven't completed. But I think like it's more of like, why aren't we looping to make the circle? Why do we just keep going and going and going? Do you remember at what point we were supposed to see Fallen Goliath?
It was towards the end.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be towards the end of the hike.
See, but we were so lost and had extra mileage, we were expecting to come across it at like any time because normally that was like a 7-mile hike and it turned into a 16-mile hike. Well, so 7 turned into 11 with the 2 miles extra like round trip for the trail. But then it turned into 16 miles, so somehow we added an extra 5 miles. So I don't know at what point we thought we were going to come across it, but technically it should have been at the end of the trail.
At around 11 miles, we started feeling a little scared. We were like, all right, we have no food. We're out in the middle of the wilderness. We have no cell phone service. We don't know where we are or how to get back to the trailhead. There's no people around. We were like, oh my God, like we're going to die out here.
At one point, like, because I do remember that's when we were at the 11 miles, but I also remember like all of us looking at each other and laughing because yes, we were scared, but laughing because we're like, you guys, we don't even know where we're at. We don't even know how many more miles we have to go to even like reach the trailhead.
The funny part is we were making a loop that looked like the trail picture. So it looked like we were maintaining that shape. We just didn't feel like we were getting anywhere while we were going there.
Yeah.
It held that shape like tried and true. I just don't know how we like added the extra mileage onto it.
Larger.
Yeah.
We went a wide loop.
Yeah, so as we sat there at 11 miles, that's where we barely had any food, and so the only thing that we have left are 2 bananas, and there's 4 of us, so we split the 2 bananas amongst us 4.
I just want to say one banana was supposed to be for me and one for Brittany, and you guys came ill prepared.
No, I had a banana. I split it with Kim, and it was a really mushy banana.
I thought it was our
It
banana.
was the banana that was stinking up her bagel bag.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Okay, that's right. For whatever reason, I was remembering bringing a banana for me and Brittany, and then we gave
Maybe
you one of
had
ours.
one banana
Okay.
the day before.
I accept your apology.
Probably, yeah.
I brought that banana.
I apologize. That's right. It makes sense now.
Saved my
coming
life.
around with the bagel, though.
So we finally make it back to the trailhead, and we are so, so, so happy to make it there.
But not before Jamal nearly tore down a tree. You want to tell us about that?
Yeah. So, I mean, at one point in the hike, I ended up finding like a good actual stick that I was just like, all right, man, this is going to make a good hiking stick. I need it. Like, my God, I don't know how much longer we're going to be on this. And, you know, I've said before in previous podcasts, the girls like to come up with a bet before we go on trips on like when I'm going to have the freak out or if I'm going to have one or not. And so I don't know when it was discussed if I was or wasn't going to have it on that
You'll
trip.
never know.
I'll never know. But anyway, I had my walking stick, and I mean, we had to have been on mile 12 or 13 at this point because it came to be 16. So 14 was at the point of like hike up. And I was just getting over it. And at one point, we had to hike through some tree brush, bushes, and I had my stick that I was using for the hiking. And finally, like, I just was so over having to climb through bushes because I don't even think we were even on the trail anymore that I just, like,
Clearly not.
took my stick and, like, I beat it up against the bush. And then everyone's looking around like, oh my gosh, like, Jamal, are you okay? I'm like, oh yeah, like, I'm fine. Like, I'm just using my stick to move aside the bushes, you know, just to make my way through so I don't have to crawl and have it scratch me. And I only revealed to them like a year later after this trip that I was actually genuinely pissed. I took my
I knew that was a freak
I
out.
know,
Everyone knew.
but well, sure, but I lied.
Can't fool us.
And I was saying like, oh no, like it just broke as I was trying to push my way through. But like, I was just so pissed. I was like, fuck this. And I just threw my stick and it just shattered all through the bushes and whatnot. So I had my freak out on that one.
How excited were you guys when we finally saw the trailhead?
Oh my
I wanted to
God.
fall to the ground and start crying.
But we still
That was
had
mile 14.
we still had 2 fucking miles up, like all straight uphill in snow. And so it was exciting and breathtaking, but it was just like, fuck, I got a 2-mile straight hike up.
Right at the end when we were like finally getting to the end of those 2 miles up. I remember when I saw cars starting to go by because
No, we
were,
heard him. We heard him. We didn't see him.
Well, in any case, like as soon as I knew that we were close to civilization, I started to cry. It was so
It was
exciting.
rough.
It was
like,
exciting.
Turned into 16 miles. Like, my God, 16 miles. That's a big hike.
Yeah,
That was
Kim,
just prepping us for when we do the one in Yosemite, Half Dome.
I guess.
right? Did you feel, Kim, that you were able to get a good hike in on this trip then?
You know, I could have used a couple more miles.
You bitch.
I'm not even going to respond to that. Because at mile 7, you threw a shit fit.
So there we are. We finally finished the hike. We're so grateful to finish it.
Starvin' Marvin.
Yes. We just hiked
So
16 miles,
finally.
guys. So you know what? I reminded everyone I've got a bagel.
Yeah, so before we usually leave the parks, I mean, we obviously like to start hiking early in the morning, but we're like, all right, we're going to go to the visitor center because we always Brittany and I at least like to buy like an ornament. So when you were going to go there, we were like, oh man, we can't even like wait
Give
to
me that
eat
bagel.
until we get to the cafeteria and buy food. So Zaina's like, do you want that bagel? And we split that bagel into quarters. So we each had a quarter of a bagel.
Chomping at the bit of it, man.
It was,
And it was stale and it tasted like a
Banana?
and a
banana.
weak like banana. But let me tell you something. In that moment, it was like one of the best things I've ever eaten in my life.
The only carbs I had had all day.
It was satisfying because of how hungry
life-saving.
we were. Yeah.
5-star bagel. And then let's see. So I'm checking my notes on the hike. It took us 6 hours, 15 minutes, 20 seconds, 24 minutes per mile, and we burned 2,244 calories on that.
That's
hike
like
alone.
a pound.
1,000 under a pound, 3,500.
Oh, I thought a pound was 2,500.
3,500.
Thank you for correcting me.
So we finally get to the car and then we go to the general store. And some national parks in their general stores, they'll actually sell food. So we decide we can't wait any longer.
Because didn't we have to drive to get there to begin with?
Yeah, it was a 45-minute drive from Visalia into the park, and there's not really much along the way. There's not really many restaurants to stop in. There's not a lot of places to eat. And we were like, we can't wait 45 minutes.
45 minutes to an hour to get out of the park. It was not happening.
So we decide to buy a pizza from the general store.
You think pizza, right? What could go wrong?
You didn't think it was delicious?
And it was probably the best pizza we've ever had.
Oh, yeah. You know it.
You know, that pizza it still haunts me.
It was pretty rank. It was pretty rank.
It was like half uncooked. It's still cold in the center.
Like, it tasted rotten.
Like, and I just want to put into perspective how bad this was. We devoured and thought like a stale banana flavored bagel was the shit. And then we get there and we're just like, man, we're fucking hungry. Like, I can't wait to eat this pizza. We're all going to split it from the general store. And all of us took the first bite and looked at each other like, man, this shit fucking sucks.
We didn't
like,
even finish the pizza, even though we were all starving to death.
No.
That's how bad it was.
It was just enough to satisfy us until we got out of the park. And I think we did end up getting fast food or something of some sorts because it's just like, man, that pizza was just like terrible.
I think you guys actually even made the comment that you had better pizza in Cuba.
Yep.
And, you know, we're going to do a Cuba episode pretty soon, but the pizza in Cuba was nothing to write home about. That's an understatement.
But, oh, man, this pizza in this national park.
Put it to shame.
Yeah.
You didn't like your Easter dinner that night?
I didn't.
Oh.
So, tip, if you go to the food cafeteria in the national park, skip the pizza.
Or hopefully they've stepped up their game since.
And when you guys go on a hiking trip, make sure you pack adequate water. Make sure you pack snacks that you plan to eat. Maybe a few extra snacks hide in your bag just in case something happens and you get lost. Just be prepared for the worst and hope for the best.
Any final thoughts, ladies, on Kings Canyon or Sequoia?
One thing that I think about a lot is whether or not Fallen Goliath truly exists.
I don't know if it does or
We saw it
not.
in pictures. We did not see it in person.
But
So if you see it and you do this hike, send us pictures. Let us know where it's at.
So didn't one of you ladies, since I'm always the driver, start like Googling and found something on some sort of hiking website that basically said you were supposed to veer off at this point to a certain spot and we were supposed to find it? Does anyone remember that?
yeah, I remember that. That's what they always say.
That's what they always say. We never
never found it.
No. But one thing that I do want to say that I don't think we touched on a bit was, so when we went to Kings Canyon that day, it does have General Grant, which is the second largest tree on Earth. Now, we got there early that day simply because we knew we were going to be doing a larger hike. We didn't know how large it was going to be at that point, but we knew it was going to be like a 7-mile hike, and that was going to be our day driving home to get back for work on Monday. But as we said with General Sherman, I mean, it's really crowded. General Grant's going to be the same, but we were there so early in the morning that we were the only ones at the tree. And by the only ones, I mean, we were able to sit there and look at it and take our time taking photos. So honestly, if you do go, invest the time to wake up early and literally enjoy this beautiful tree or those beautiful trees all to yourself. Like, there is no better feeling than knowing like, man, this is the largest living thing on Earth. That's exciting to me, you know?
All right, ladies and gents, thank you so much for tuning in this week. We hope you liked learning about Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks, and I hope this inspires you to take the trip for yourself.
As always, guys, please subscribe to our podcast, leave a review, tell us what you'd like and what you'd like to hear, and tune in every Travel Tuesday for new episodes.
And if you aren't already, be sure to follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Travel Squad Podcast.
Next week, unpack your bags and relax because we are telling you all about cruise life.
Cruise life!
Cruise life.
Woo! Can't wait.
Get ready for some cruising.
All right, bye everyone.